Alyssa's hand trembled slightly as she adjusted the phone on the dashboard of her car. Her mom's voice crackled clearly over the speaker, unaware that Alyssa was quietly listening in, driving to pick her up for what was supposed to be a joyful family dinner. "Honestly, Jess, I don't know why you invited Alyssa again," her mom scoffed bitterly to Alyssa's sister. "She's just a walking wallet these days. She doesn't deserve to be treated like family. Just smile, nod, and she'll pay for everything, like always." Alyssa's heart sank violently, every muscle in her chest tightening, as if someone had punched the air right out of her. Her eyes blurred with tears that she furiously blinked away, her grip tightening dangerously on the steering wheel. It felt as though the world had shifted in just a heartbeat. Her own mother, the woman who had once rocked her to sleep as a child, who had cheered for her at graduation, was speaking of her like she was nothing but an ATM. The line went silent, then crackled again with Jess's hesitant reply. "Mom, she's still family, you can't." Family, her mother's laughter was sharp and cruel, slicing through the silence like shattered glass. "Family is there when you're needed, not just to throw money around. Let's just get through tonight, pretend we actually care, and move on." Alyssa could no longer breathe. Her car suddenly felt suffocatingly small. Pulling to the side of the road, she parked and clutched her chest, gasping for air as tears broke loose, rolling hotly down her cheeks. For years, she'd given tirelessly, without question, always smiling and quietly paying for their dinners, holidays, medical bills, anything and everything they asked. She never once complained, believing her generosity was appreciated, that it meant something. But in that moment, she saw the harsh truth illuminated with stark, merciless clarity. Taking a shaky breath, she stared at her reflection in the rearview mirror. Her mascara streaked her flushed cheeks, but her eyes burned with determination, shining brighter than ever. The naive girl they had taken advantage of was gone, replaced by a woman who finally understood her worth. "Okay, Mom," she whispered to herself, voice trembling with both pain and a newfound resolve. "If that's how you truly feel, then I promise you, I'll make you regret every single penny you took from me." Yet, despite the storm raging in her heart, Alyssa didn't feel bitterness alone. Beneath it was a desire for justice tempered with compassion, a desperate need not just to reclaim her dignity, but perhaps, somehow, to heal her fractured family too. Revenge wasn't about cruelty, it was about teaching them to value what they'd lost sight of. And she would find a way to do it, no matter what it took. Composing herself, Alyssa dabbed her tears away, started her car again, and continued towards the restaurant, her heartbeat drumming with purpose. Tonight was the beginning of a different story, and for once, she would be the one writing it. As Alyssa stepped into the restaurant, her family was already seated, smiles fixed in place. Her mother wore her usual confident facade, blissfully unaware that her careless words had struck a devastating blow just minutes ago. "Alyssa, darling," her mom cooed artificially, standing up to embrace her as though nothing had happened. "You look wonderful as always." Alyssa stood rigid in the hug, every muscle screaming to pull away, to shout, to confront. But she steadied her nerves, smiled faintly, and nodded. "Thanks, Mom." Her sister Jess shot her a careful, almost guilty glance, but remained silent. Alyssa knew Jess had tried, but right now, apologies weren't enough. She needed action, proof that her family could change. Dinner went on, an excruciating play of forced laughter and shallow conversations, the air thick with hidden tensions. Alyssa paid quietly as always, enduring her mother's knowing smirk when she reached for the bill, making her feel small and insignificant all over again. But this time, Alyssa forced a smile, thinking carefully about her next move. As the night ended, Alyssa stood outside, watching her family disperse without a backward glance. Jess hesitated, lingering behind the others. "LYSS, everything okay?" "No," Alyssa answered softly, her voice steady and firm. "But it will be." Jess looked away guiltily, nodding slowly. "I'm sorry for what you heard." "It's fine. Really," Alyssa said, the steel in her voice unmistakable. "But things are going to change, Jess. I'm done being used. Jess's eyes widened, perhaps startled by the quiet intensity in Alyssa's voice. What are you going to do? Alyssa paused, her eyes drifting to her mother, now disappearing into her expensive car, completely indifferent to her daughter's pain. I'm going to make sure Mom understands exactly what family really means. Turning on her heel, Alyssa left Jess standing stunned beneath the restaurant's glowing neon lights. The decision was made. There was no turning back. She would remind her family what they'd forgotten, not through cruelty or hate, but through strength, self-respect, and kindness they no longer deserved, yet desperately needed. As Alyssa slipped behind the wheel again, she exhaled a slow breath, feeling lighter despite the pain still throbbing inside her chest. This wasn't just revenge, it was redemption. And she was ready for it. The following morning, Alyssa awoke early, sunlight streaking through her curtains, casting warm rays across her determined face. She felt oddly at peace despite the lingering ache from her mother's harsh words still resonating deep within her chest. It was as though hearing those cruel remarks had ignited something fierce and fearless within her, something that had remained dormant far too long. Today would be different. Today, Alyssa would finally reclaim the respect and dignity she'd given away freely, blindly, for years. Stepping into the bustling cafe near her office, Alyssa glanced around, taking in the lively chatter, the rich aroma of fresh coffee swirling pleasantly around her. Spotting a familiar face at the corner table, she made her way forward confidently. "Good morning, Alyssa," greeted Thomas Drake, her trusted financial advisor, as he stood respectfully, shaking her hand warmly. He'd always been professional, a source of steady guidance through her years of success. Today, though, she knew their conversation would mark a turning point. "Thanks for coming on such short notice," she began softly, settling into the plush leather seat opposite him. "Of course," Thomas replied, brow furrowing slightly in concern. "You sounded urgent on the phone. Is everything all right?" Alyssa paused for a heartbeat, memories of her mother's harsh laughter returning vividly, threatening to derail her composure. "No, it's not," she admitted, voice shaking subtly. "I realized I've allowed my family to use me for far too long. I've given them everything without asking for anything in return. No respect, no appreciation, nothing." Thomas nodded knowingly, empathy evident in his eyes. "I understand, Alyssa. Family dynamics can be difficult. But you're a generous soul. Don't lose sight of that." "That's just it," Alyssa interrupted passionately. "I don't want to stop being generous or kind, but I have to set boundaries. I want your help in making a few changes. Quietly, subtly, but effectively." Thomas leaned forward attentively, sensing the shift in Alyssa's tone. "I'm listening." Alyssa took a deep breath, steadying her racing heart. "I want to restructure my finances. No more free credit cards, no endless checks. I need clear restrictions, controlled amounts for medical or emergency needs only. If my family truly needs help, I'll always be there, but no more lavish dinners, vacations, shopping sprees. From now on, they'll understand the true value of what I give." Thomas nodded slowly, impressed. "That's a bold move. Boundaries are necessary, Alyssa. It's about self-respect." Alyssa smiled faintly, a spark returning to her eyes. "Exactly. And I want you to help me set up a new charity foundation, something meaningful, impactful. Instead of wasting money on empty gestures, I want my resources to genuinely change lives." Thomas smiled warmly, genuine pride lighting his features. "Considered done. I'll prepare everything immediately. You're making a brave decision." "It's about time," Alyssa whispered, determination burning brighter in her gaze. "They need to understand kindness isn't weakness. It's strength." As the morning rolled into afternoon, Alyssa felt empowered like never before. By the time evening approached, the plan was firmly set into motion. She sat in her cozy apartment, sipping tea and reflecting on her choices, when her phone buzzed gently. The screen lit up with her mother's smiling face, a sight that now felt strangely hollow. Alyssa hesitated but finally swiped to answer. "Hi, Mom," she greeted evenly, forcing calm into her voice. Alyssa, sweetheart. Her mother purred smoothly, voice syrupy sweet. I was thinking about our annual family vacation. Perhaps we could book the villa in Tuscany again? The weather should be lovely this time of year, and of course, we'd all enjoy your company so much. Alyssa paused, her breath hitching briefly in her throat. It would be easy, tempting even, to give in again, to ignore her hurt, to pretend she hadn't overheard her mother's painful words. But she refused to surrender to old patterns. Actually, Mom, Alyssa began gently but resolutely, I've decided to skip the family vacation this year. Her mother's silence was deafening, disbelief apparent even over the phone. But Alyssa, why on earth would you do that? You always take care of everything. Yes, Alyssa replied softly, sadness mixing with strength. I always do. But I think it's time I take care of myself for once. Alyssa, her mother's voice hardened slightly, losing its sweetness. What exactly is this about? She took a deep breath, her heart racing. It's about respect, Mom. About feeling valued. Not just as a wallet, but as family. Her mother's silence stretched, tension crackling through the phone. Finally, her mother sighed impatiently, tone dismissive. You're being dramatic, Alyssa. We'll discuss this another time. No, Mom. Alyssa responded firmly, her voice unwavering. We won't. My decision is final. Without waiting for further argument, Alyssa gently ended the call, heart pounding furiously in her chest. It was painful yet exhilarating, her first true boundary. But she knew deep down it was the right thing to do. The next several weeks were transformative. Alyssa quietly implemented the new financial boundaries, redirecting her generosity toward meaningful community causes. Each small victory felt like breathing fresh air, gradually erasing the bitterness she had carried since overhearing her mother's cruel remarks. Yet, even as she thrived, Alyssa couldn't shake the ache, longing for genuine reconciliation with the family she still deeply loved. Then, one rainy evening, an unexpected knock echoed through her apartment. Alyssa opened the door, startled to find Jess standing there, soaked from the rain, eyes wide and apologetic. "LYSS," Jess whispered, tears mixing with raindrops streaking her cheeks. "We need to talk. Mom, she finally understands what she's lost." Alyssa hesitated briefly, heart racing, then slowly stepped aside to let Jess in. As they faced each other, dripping water onto the floor, she saw sincerity, regret, and desperate hope reflected in her sister's eyes. Perhaps, she thought, heart aching yet hopeful, her family could still be saved, but this time, it would be on her terms. Jess stood shivering slightly, her gaze fixed firmly on Alyssa. She took a deep breath, carefully choosing her words. "Mom finally realized what she lost when you stopped funding everything. At first she was angry, but now she's broken, Alyssa. She's starting to understand." Alyssa folded her arms, uncertainty flickering in her eyes. "Jess, I'm tired of empty apologies. I don't want to be used anymore." Jess stepped closer, sincerity softening her voice. "I know. You have every right to feel that way. But this is different. She's struggling, and maybe, just maybe, she's finally learning to appreciate you." Alyssa sighed heavily, conflicted emotions swirling inside her. "How can I trust that's true?" "Because she admitted it," Jess said earnestly. "She cried, LYSS. I've never seen her like that. She realized you're the glue holding us together, not just financially, but emotionally. Without you, our family is falling apart." Those words echoed through Alyssa's heart, tugging at her deeply held hope for reconciliation. She hesitated, then finally nodded. "I'll talk to her. But things have to change, Jess. Real change." "I promise they will," Jess whispered gratefully, relief filling her eyes. Alyssa couldn't help but hope that maybe kindness, not bitterness, would finally mend the wounds. 2 days later, Alyssa sat across from her mother in the quiet corner of their favorite coffee shop. Her mother appeared worn, vulnerable, far from the confident woman Alyssa had always known. "I've hurt you," her mother began softly, eyes glistening with genuine remorse. "And I'm ashamed." I let greed overshadow love. I treated you terribly, and I understand if you never forgive me. Alyssa swallowed hard, tears threatening. Mom, I just wanted to feel valued, not because of my money, but because I'm your daughter. Her mother nodded slowly, tears slipping silently down her cheeks. I was blind. I thought money was security, but I pushed away the most precious thing, my child. I'm truly sorry. For the first time in months, Alyssa felt genuine warmth return. I want us to heal, she whispered gently. But I can't go back to the way things were.
I have boundaries now, Mom.
I won't be used again. I understand, her mother answered, voice trembling with sincerity. All I ask is a chance to prove myself. Not for money, but because I miss my daughter. Alyssa reached out, gently taking her mother's hand. Her heart felt lighter, healing slowly. Then let's start fresh. Together. Outside, the clouds broke apart, sunlight streaming down, mirroring the quiet hope blossoming between mother and daughter. Alyssa knew forgiveness wouldn't be easy, but kindness was powerful enough to bring even a shattered family back together. In the weeks following that emotional conversation, Alyssa saw small but meaningful changes in her mother's behavior. She no longer called simply to request favors or money. Instead, she began asking genuine questions about Alyssa's life, interests, and feelings. Simple gestures, once overlooked, now filled their interactions with warmth and sincerity. One afternoon, Alyssa received a surprising invitation from her mother for a family dinner, this time hosted at her mother's modest home. Alyssa hesitated briefly, the painful memories still fresh, but eventually agreed. Perhaps this evening could become a true turning point. When Alyssa arrived, the familiar scent of her mother's cooking greeted her. Inside, the atmosphere was different. Soft music played gently in the background, candles flickered warmly on the table, and her mother stood nervously in the kitchen doorway, smiling gently. I'm glad you came, her mother said quietly, sincerity clear in her eyes. Me too, Alyssa replied softly, cautiously allowing herself to feel hopeful. The dinner unfolded beautifully, not lavish, but thoughtful and genuine. The conversation flowed naturally, full of heartfelt laughter and gentle memories. Alyssa found herself relaxing, tension slipping away with each passing moment. As the meal ended, her mother reached over, gently squeezing Alyssa's hand. I have something important to say. For years, I was blind to how deeply I hurt you. Your kindness deserved appreciation, not exploitation. I promise to never take your generosity or love for granted again. Tears blurred Alyssa's vision. She finally felt seen, not as a source of money, but as a beloved daughter. That means a lot, Mom, she whispered, voice thick with emotion. All I ever wanted was your love. You always had it, her mother replied earnestly. I just forgot how to show it. At that moment, Alyssa realized her quiet revenge hadn't just been about reclaiming dignity. It had transformed into something greater, genuine redemption for both of them. When she left that evening, her heart felt lighter than ever. Alyssa knew trust and healing took time, but the first real step had finally been taken. Over the next several months, Alyssa's relationship with her family blossomed into something entirely new. Boundaries she had established remained strong, but the kindness and generosity she had always embodied returned, this time genuinely appreciated and never exploited. One sunny afternoon, Alyssa invited her family to the opening of the charity she had founded, a place dedicated to helping families in need rebuild their lives. She stood proudly at the entrance, watching guests gather and mingle, her heart swelling with joy. Her mother approached, tears shimmering gently in her eyes. You've built something truly special here, she said warmly, admiration glowing in her expression. Alyssa smiled softly. It's about giving back, about kindness, without expectations. This was always my vision. Her mother nodded, sincerity filling her voice. I'm proud of you, Alyssa. You've shown me what true generosity means. I promise I'll never forget. Jess stepped up beside them, linking arms affectionately. You've changed us, LYSS, more than you know. The genuine warmth in their eyes melted away any lingering bitterness Alyssa felt. She had achieved what she wanted, not through harsh revenge, but through strength, compassion, and unwavering kindness. Her quiet triumph wasn't simply reclaiming her dignity, but helping her family rediscover love and appreciation. As the day ended and guests departed, Alyssa reflected quietly on her journey. She realized that the overheard conversation, the painful moment that had shattered her world, had, ironically, become a powerful gift. It forced her to grow stronger, wiser, and kinder. Most importantly, it had reunited her family in the most meaningful way possible. In that gentle moment of reflection, Alyssa felt genuinely grateful for all she had been through. She had taught her family a vital lesson. Kindness and respect were not signs of weakness, but profound strength. And finally, she knew she would never again be seen as just a walking wallet. Instead, she was loved for who she truly was.